I've used all three of these pieces of gear separately, but I never thought to put them together into a single setup. Until I got this comment, and I thought, let's give it a try. It might seem like an unlikely combo, but I'm going to try my best to put together a live performance setup using only these three pieces of gear. Welcome back to Mix and Match. First up, let me properly introduce the gear. We've got the Yamaha Reface CP, which has vintage electric piano sounds built in. It's like a portable electric piano. Followed by the SP404 Mark II, a legendary sampler that you can full-on make beats on, but it's very powerful for sampling all types of sound. And finally, I've got the APC40 Mark II, which is an Ableton Live controller. APC stands for Ableton Performance Controller. But we're gonna come back to that in a moment. I wanna jump right into doing some sampling with the Reface CP and the 404. This is my favorite sampling technique at the moment with the 404. It's using the looper to create even 4-bar loops. And then what you can do is start to mix and mangle those. You can play with sample timing, reverse samples, and add effects. I just love the sound of this keyboard. Now, last time I told you all about these XTS stands that I use for my gear. This time, let me tell you a little bit about the Track Pack by Analog Cases, the sponsor for today's video. Now let's put this bag to the test. Look how much gear we can fit into the Track Pack. And as we fill up this bag, just know there was space left over by the time we finished. I mean, I've got a bunch of controllers in here. I've got a bunch of cables, more than I would ever need for any one particular live performance gig or to travel with. I've even got space for the Ableton Push 3. Now, that is gonna make this a pretty heavy bag, but like I said, this is the extreme, and also wearing the bag is not uncomfortable because we've got these nice pads on the back which keep things cozy. Whether it's stands, bags, or cases, Analog Cases has something for you. Check out their site and use my link in the description for 10% off your purchase. But now it's time to get experimental and head over to my sampling station where we can run the Reface CP through my pedal setup. I like to think of this pedal setup as adding a little more magic, a little more sauce to any sound. The tensor pedal is going to help me control timing. The artifact pedal gives me some lo-fi effects. And then the microcosm just adds spaciness, a lot of granular stuff. I can add reverb and delays on that as well. But eventually I just start looping these ambient pad sounds, and it's time to find something to do with them. Eventually, a groove comes to mind. And now for your Grammy consideration for Best Vocal. Doesn't sound like much when we record it in, but once we get the samples going, it sounds pretty good. Now, all this sampling stuff is fun and all, but I'm really starting to have doubts about whether or not this is going to come together as some type of finished piece. Like, this doesn't have enough polish to it or identity as its own track yet. So after catching all those sounds like a bunch of rare Pokemon, it's time to get them over onto the computer, which we can do with the multi-pad export feature on the SP404. Makes it really easy to just export stems from any pattern that you have on the 404. And I'll have to start making some decisions about which of those sounds will be usable in our final track. After a few hours of refining, here's what we came up with. First, some sounds that didn't come from our sampling sessions. The drums. I decided to just build up some drums from an Ableton Live kit and some splice samples. I wanted to go with a house feel for this one. Next up, a pad sound from the drift synth in Ableton Live. Followed by just a simple sub bass. Here's where we get into the sounds from the Reface EP. This is a sample from the Toy Piano preset. These chords are from the pedal setup sampling session. Same with this sample, but I just manipulated it further in Ableton Live to make it more bouncy. And here are the vocals from the 404 sampling session. And that's what these are too, but we're just going to use them as a chopped instrument. And now we're ready to utilize the final piece of gear, the APC40, which when we connect it to Live after all that work we just did, we will have all these clips arranged into scenes, basically the basis for our track. I'm going to custom map the crossfader to turn the kick on and off during the performance. And we've got these awesome encoders. I will definitely be using those for live performance effects. Before we go further, here's something cool, at least to me. Indulge me for a moment. I still have my APC40 Mark I. This thing is a relic at this point. Look at that old Ableton logo on it. But I remember saving up for this thing. I bought it in 2013 for about $140 on eBay, and it's still fully functional with a lot of the same functions as the Mark II version. A couple drawbacks of this early version are that it requires external power and that we don't get the luxury of RGB pads. They're all either orange or green. Back in my day, all the colors were orange and green. We didn't have no RGB. Since we're almost ready to put this together into a live performance, let's talk routing. Everything is going to run off of my MacBook Air for this live performance, and all the gear will be connected via a USB hub. We will be using the sounds from the Reface EP, but also we're going to use it as a MIDI controller. And the 404 will be our audio interface, hence the USB connection. So I'll connect the audio out of the Reface to the audio input of the 404. Selecting the external source mode on the 404 will allow me to hear the Reface as well as the audio from Ableton Live, because we're going to set 404 to be Ableton Live's output. To record this session, I'll use a Sony handheld recorder. I'll use my wireless headphones, the receiver connected to that, and we're good to go. Definitely don't sleep on the practice and preparation part of this process, and don't let a short YouTube video fool you. I spent a few days and a few nights tweaking and perfecting this setup, and multiple takes when it came time to shoot the final live performance, all for one about 3-minute long live performance session. It's part of the process that's not glamorous, so we don't see it that often, but it's important for you to know if you're making your own live performances and you're just in the trenches working and it feels like it's taking too long, it's probably not. You're probably putting in the same amount of work that a lot of people are. So don't get discouraged if things don't come fast. Everybody is putting the time and the work in. We just don't always have visibility into that time. The full performance video with no commentary is available on the channel, but I'll talk you through a little bit of what's going on in this live performance. Of course, we're launching clips and tweaking effects with the APC40, and what you're going to see me play first on the Reface EP, I'm actually playing that vocal instrument. So we're not hearing the Reface EP, I'm just using it as a MIDI controller at this moment. There's a little bit of using the crossfader, bring the kick in and out. That's working really well. All these stutters are created by using beat repeats in Ableton Live. I like to put those on the master track as well as the drum tracks themselves. And if you watch carefully here, you're going to see my left hand start to bring the volume of the Reface EP up. I just triggered a sample on the 404, just want to point that out. But since we're playing on top of the Ableton Live sound rather than being mixed in Ableton Live, I have to manually control the volume of the Reface CP during the live session, which is a little tricky. It's not ideal, but it kind of works here. And once again, that Reface CP just provides the perfect top line melody sound for this track. And I've got these vocal chops right here on the 404. No need to arm any tracks in Ableton Live. Those samples are right on the 404, which is playing on top of the track coming from Ableton Live. It's pretty convenient, actually. Honestly, this setup surprised me in a good way. It really reminded me to just trust the process, because after those sampling sessions, I really had no idea what I was going to end up making, but I was really happy with the end result. And being confined to just this setup was a forcing mechanism, and it ended up being really fun to perform with. I didn't have endless layers of possibilities. I worked with the gear that I had and tried to use each piece to its fullest strength. If you can think of a weird or an interesting setup like this one, definitely leave your comments down below, and we might just try it on the next episode of Mix and Match. Thank you to Analog Cases for sponsoring this series, and thank you to my channel members who support the channel every single month and are getting some cool perks that go along with that membership. Click the join button down below, or subscribe plus now I think they're calling it. I don't know. Whatever it is, leave a like on your way out. This has been TAETRO. Have a good one.